Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Norway Chess 2026, a super tournament featuring Magnus Carlsen and some of the other best chess players in the world. And the storyline thus far has been that this is the worst chess tournament you and I have ever witnessed the greatest player of all time play. Because 99% of you were not watching chess before 2020, and even if you were, he hasn't played a tournament like this since 2015. In fact, all of the greatest records of Magnus Carlsen's career from the non-losing perspective have been shattered in this event. And I will be showing you the round 8 game, and I have to give credit to his opponents for the way that they are playing. It is really impressive that, like, the second a person, to quote Gen Alpha, loses a little bit of aura, the sharks are pouncing. And what makes the Magnus Carlsen era so incredible is that every time he is basically counted out of a tournament, he comes back and finds a way to win it. Now, the big picture is going to be, what's he going to do in the next tournament? Because we are expecting a monumental return to form. This is the 8th round out of 10 rounds. And in this round, he's playing against Pragnananda, who defeated him the last time that they played. In that game, Prag had the white pieces. In this game, Magnus goes for e4. Prag plays e6, the French defense. And once again, in the early opening, Magnus plays d4. And what makes the French so interesting nowadays is that it's not like the best opening at compared to some of the other stuff that Black can play, but it's very, very combative, especially if you're going up against somebody that wants to play the game for a win. And so Magnus plays the advanced French, which is very critical. Black can't easily develop. Black plays c5, looking for this pawn break, and c5 and f6 are the two critical pawn breaks in the French, especially the advance. c3, knight c6, knight f3. Now Black has several ways that they can play. The main line for many years, I think, has been queen to b6, just applying more pressure to the queen side. Another way that Black can play is bishop d7 followed by rook c8, quick development of the queen side. Another way that Black can play is lines where this knight goes to f5, or Black can play the quick move f6. Prag plays knight h6, which is a disgusting looking move. In many ways, you just set yourself up for a damaging of your own structure. Now, for 99 out of 100 people watching, maybe 99 and a half, this is the best practical move. If you can damage your opponent's pawn structure like this and weaken their king forever, it's going to lead to really good things for you in your chess career. It doesn't matter that you're losing a dark-squared bishop and this pawn could be weak. None of that matters. Defending a weak king and having weaknesses is really the way to play. Magnus plays knight a3. He spends 16 minutes on the move knight a3, and throughout this tournament, we have seen him overthink the opening like we've never seen before. And I think the reason for that is chess opening theory has evolved in chess to such... Chess opening theory has evolved in chess. God, I really am a moron. Has evolved in chess so much. Everybody knows everything. And if you're not keeping up to date with everything, you have to trust your own intuition and distrust your own intuition all the time. Knight a3, knight h6. How do I explain this to people? You want to play knight c2 and stabilize the center. That is actually the idea. You don't have an easy square to put this bishop, and you didn't want to play knight bd2. So you play knight a3 because your opponent also disrespected you. And now we have pawn takes, and Prag plays the move f6. And Prag has not thought yet. He hasn't thought yet. Now we have the second pawn break. White can play bishop d3 and try to castle. White can take. That's exactly what happens. And Prag, he could take with the pawn, and then obviously his knight would be protected by the bishop, and he would no longer risk damaging his pawn structure, but he can also take with the queen, and the computer likes both options. Now, if you are watching this, you should not play chess like this. You should not put your knight to the side and then move your f-pawn. You're going to lose 5 moves from here. Prag plays queen takes f6, and I knew that we were off to a very bad start when I booted up the game this morning and saw that Magnus was down 38 minutes. This has not worked throughout this tournament. It just hasn't worked. Now, the move bishop d3 is a very natural move. You know, you want to follow up with maybe bishop g5. You want a short castle. You want to play knight c2, get the knight over to this side. Prag here plays bishop b4 check. This is a very important move, disrupting very temporarily the white position. White now cannot castle. White has to play bishop here. And now Pragg thinks on his own. He takes the knight now, which is interesting. He could have taken the knight without forcing the bishop out. Why would you help your opponent develop, right? Well, in many ways, the move bishop d2 blocks the queen's involvement. So the queen now has another layer that it has to clear out to defend the center. And so Pragg is like, I'm going to take, and then I'm just going to take Magnus's pawn. Because originally he wasn't able to do that. There would have been a discovered attack against the queen. With this bishop in the way, it's possible. Magnus takes back, and Pragg goes here. And now white needs to go bishop b5 check, which is the only move. You can also take on h6 if you want to clear out the position, which Magnus opts for. Bishop b5 check is allegedly the only way to play this position for an advantage. Black here would need to block. You would then take, obviously moving your king into the center of the board in the middle of a game. Now instead of taking and getting into a bunch of trades, white can actually castle. And the computer thinks that despite being down a pawn, the king being weak, and white's, pieces being a little bit more active, there's some good compensation here for white. For the millionth time, Magnus is a human. He opts to damage his opponent's pawn structure. Queen c3 check is played. You now cannot bring the bishop back because you would take. You can't go here because you would lose this. You have to move your king. King f1 and g takes h6. And let the games begin. Magnus plays rook c1, and Pragg, who is up 54 minutes on the clock from the opening, decreases his time advantage by 70%, 75%. He can play queen takes pawn, queen a5, queen b2, queen e5, queen f6, or queen g7. Which of those moves is correct? I have bad news. They're almost all fine. Almost all of them. Queen e5 is maybe not as good because the queen is kind of blocked by some pieces, but a lot of them are good. He ultimately, I think actually queen e5 is okay. He plays queen e5. It's not the best move. Every move is okay. He plays queen e5. Magnus sees this move, but I'm not sure he wants to trade all the pieces. I think Magnus at this point is like, dude, my opponent has not touched any of these pieces. It's been 15 moves of game time. Black, from the starting position, has not moved any of these pieces. How can this be okay? How can you play chess with a queen and some pawns? What are we, 5 years old? Like, you teach your 5-year-old cousin to move a couple of pieces around, and that's kind of how the game proceeds. Well, that's actually what we're dealing with here. Magnus goes g3. We have bishop d7. Remember, if we start trading pieces, we go to the endgame. Ultimately, the guy with more pawns is probably going to win. King g2, and Pragg, he just castles. Queen g4 check, looks scary, but I always say in chess, you cannot judge or evaluate a position by with words. Like by words, you can't say, oh, it looks scary. Is it scary or not? Rook e1, queen goes back to g7. There's not really a way to attack. I mean, you can keep making moves like rook c7. It's a very good move. Putting pressure. Magnus is going to win a pawn back. Rook f7 defense. He can take the pawn on b7. He plays f4, though. So he kind of blocks out the rook, and this is now no longer a capturable pawn ever. He controls the e5 square, and Magnus is looking for some sort of structure. If the queens come off the board, like rook f8, and if Magnus plays queen a1, this move doesn't quite work right now, but if he were to get away with this, right, and then black would play something like, I don't know, king g7, white would go here, and then white would try to walk the king, to the stronghold on e5. That's how white would try to play. Magnus has to move his king back to h1, bishop e8, and rook takes rook, bishop takes rook, and queen c2. And it's 15 minutes to 47. Certainly, we are not going to see the same story unfold for a fourth time, right? Tough position, difficult to make decisions, Magnus down on time. He's not going to lose, right? It's a very tense position. He's a pawn down, but he has much more active pieces. Bishop h5, very good move from Pragg. He gives away the pawn to try to activate with bishop f3 and rook f4 and the queen cutting. Magnus goes king g2. He's down to 5 minutes. We have never, ever seen this before. He is down 5 to 45. This is the type of time trouble I get into in my games. He's not trusting himself. And who can, I mean, you lose 3 games in a tournament. Hey, guys, I've lost like 6 games in a tournament out of 9 rounds before. It's not that bad, but it's scary. You lose this pawn, you have queen c8 check, and at some point, you give up the notion that you're playing for a win. Like, you have to be like, yo, I think I got to stabilize this position. Now Magnus starts, rook f1. All right, we're going to a queen and bishop endgame. Both have damaged pawns. This pawn's not really, like, intimidating anybody. White is still more active, still creating more threats. White has the safer king. Prog is also going to get into time trouble. He's not immune. You can't really trade queens, but you can stay active. Queen b2 check. King goes out to h3. Certainly a move. I mean, you don't want to put the king on the back rank, but apparently you should. You don't want to put the king on the back rank. You kind of feel like, maybe you go out to h3. After king g7, it's the first sign of life. You see it's minus 0.8. So, like, at this point, the computer's like, what about, like, hey, what about your king? What about your king? And we get queen c7, bishop f7. Bishop d3 for Magnus. And now Prog starts threatening the queen trade with queen b6. Queen e5, queen f6. Because you can't trade with white. You can't trade. You can't trade because even though you win a pawn back, my king is way more active than your king. My pawn's gonna go. My pawn's gonna go. I'm gonna win a pawn back on a2, and you will lose. So Magnus can't trade queens. Queen c7. He has 1:40 on the clock. This is unbelievable. b6. a4 from Magnus. h5 from Prog attacking the king. a5 from Magnus. Queen e6 check. Magnus has to make 3 moves in 41 seconds, or he loses the game on time. At the 40th move of the time control, you gain 10 seconds per move. So he plays king g2, queen e3, takes, and the bishop comes back to c2. He has equalized the game, but he has 29 seconds. And he only gets 10 extra seconds every time you make a move. Prog goes h6. Prog's not really doing much. With white here, you can play h4. Black is going to start trying to push, but black can't even really move the bishop because he's pinned. It's a very tense position. h4, Magnus shuts it down. Prog plays a pawn move. But not much is going on. Magnus goes bishop b3, queen e4 check. Maybe you just repeat moves here. b4. I mean, you can move the queen to c5, b6. Got to be a little bit careful here. Magnus goes queen d6. That move is still completely fine. Queen d4 check. King e2. Queen b2 check. King d3. Now the bishop can check. Like, you didn't have to do that, right? Like, he probably could have just went this way. I'm pretty sure. But okay, actually, there might have been queen f6 check. So maybe I'm not pretty sure. So king here, check. King e3 check. And if Magnus steps back in this position, he's fine. Not to f2, because then he would be checked here. But if he steps here, that's apparently fine. And after check, king e1. But that's not easy at all. This position is very deceiving. And this move, he loses the game. Queen d4 check, king f3, queen d3 check. Prog has finally activated the bishop. At some point, this king is going to walk on a light square, and you're going to lose the game. You are now geometrically forced onto one of these light squares, at which point this bishop is going to come, and that's the end of the game. King f2, queen d2, and Magnus straight up resigns the game, because he can't keep his king on a dark square. If a dark square is met with a bishop move, white makes a draw. But if the king makes it on a light square, the bishop is going to check and it's going to be game over. And you can't stay here. Check, here, check. You lose. You have to go to a light square, at which point the bishop check comes in. Like this, bishop check. And Prog just beat Magnus Carlsen for the 2nd time in this tournament. I don't think anybody has beaten Magnus Carlsen in a tournament twice, ever. Which is what I said in the intro. Like, the records are being broken for the undefeated streaks and, like, the unbeaten streaks. People have beaten Magnus in a tournament once. I don't think anybody's ever beaten him twice. Ever. You're going to have to maybe look at youth events. Unbelievable. He still has 2 wins in the tournament, but he has 4 losses. That is wild. 20 elo down. Probably like 28-15. Maybe his lowest rating in years. Wild stuff. Wild stuff. We've never seen something like this. And as always, the storyline on this channel, we're all fans of, I mean, most of you are fans of Magnus. Some of you not, and that's life. But you wonder what's going to come next. You really do. I'm very curious. You know, I want to see him play, but if the motivation's not there, it's not there. Now, I've got more games for you. Alireza Firouzja just lost a couple of games. He was winning this tournament for a long time. Lost a couple of games. Gukesh's tournament has been all over the place. He's won, he's lost, he's won, he's lost. Queen's Gambit declined. Something that we've been seeing in this tournament quite a lot. Exchange QGD. Very sharp line. Knight e4, and now black can play like this. Bishop f5, and now g5. Super aggro stuff from Gukesh. And, you know, you really play like this with black if you want to have some fun. I've never seen this before. Queen b3, short castle. Black just gives up the entire queenside. I've never seen this before. Queen takes. Your rook is trapped, but you play c6. Because if the guy takes your rook, you trap the queen. Little trick for any of you. If you ever blunder a rook, look for a way to lock the door shut. And then if the knight goes to e5, that's not actually a threat. And if this, the queen just gets trapped even faster. So queen c7 from Alireza, who now is like, well, I want a pawn, and if I trade queens, that's what Gotham taught me in videos, like trade knights, trade queens, trade bishops, etc. Like, ultimately, I'm going to have more pawns. Prague had more pawns in his game, but he ended up winning the game with a vicious checkmating attack. And so Gukesh now has to play this game down a pawn, but with a little bit more active pieces. Ultimately, Alireza is going to make some improving moves. He's going to continue to try to trade pieces throughout this game. Gukesh plays like this. Gukesh is doing well. His position is very active. His knight is going to come here. The pawn is going to come. The pawn, like, he's going to hold Alireza back. Knight e4. Yep. SC4. Alireza is going to try to break out. Now's the big moment. Black is a pawn down, but he's going to try to trade. He's going to try to get into an equal endgame. Alireza plays pawn takes, pawn takes. Now we have a rook endgame, and black has to avoid certain trades here. If you get into a pure rook endgame, you might be losing. If you get into a knight endgame, you might be losing. If you get into a pawn endgame, you're probably losing. It's almost 9 out of 10 times in a pawn endgame. If you're down pawns, you're probably going to lose. So Gukesh is going to try. Alireza very tricky with the load time. Rook c2, nice move. Gukesh 2 pawns down, but his rook and knight are so active. White is almost guaranteed to lose back at least one of the pawns. This is equal, but it's not easy. If the pawn is out here, it's just going to start walking. And while black gives resources, you're just going to win these pawns. So Alireza now is looking for a way forward, and he actually gets it right here. King e6 is a mistake. It's a mistake because had you run your king to c6 and I went a4, you would give me check and then get behind the pawn. The best way to defend a pawn from going up the board is behind it. Not sideways, not in front of it, because then I'll put my rook behind it, but behind. And now white can't make any progress. White has to keep the rook here. White can't go in. He's going to lose the pawn. So the idea is check and rook a1 by black. And by putting his king here, Gukesh blunders something very trivial. He blunders a check. And now this doesn't work because rook e1. And the pawn endgame is losing. So this shift helps the rook come back, and that little momentum swing in this endgame almost makes it practically impossible to defend this. The rook is coming here, which means these resources are going this way, and white in the meantime is going to just attack you over here. And that is exactly what happens. You go over there, but I'm going to get my king and my rook in, and Alireza Firouzja pushes his pawn forward. f4, amazing, well-timed move. Excellent maneuvering here. Boom. Look at this. You can trade rooks. The pawn's going to run away. And if you don't trade rooks with me, I will eat these pawns. Like Pac-Man. This rook is just going to go... Wah, 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 wah. And rook a1, Alireza Firouzja. Looking like Magnus Carlsen. Not Norway Chess 2026 Magnus Carlsen, but Magnus Carlsen in basically every other tournament I've covered on this channel. Firouzja wins a very, very tough endgame. What a ridiculous structure. Tripled pawns on the g-file. Very, very nice game from him. He picks up the 3 points, which is very needed because he has 10, and Wesley has 11.5. Wesley is playing with the white pieces versus Vincent Keymer. Wesley is one of the worst people to be leading a tournament because he's not going to drop points. If Wesley wants to go into lockdown mode, it's like an NBA defender. You're not going to score. He might not score that many points, all right? But he will make sure you have an absolutely miserable time. He's not going to trim his nails, all right? You're gonna get fouled. He's gonna hack. Like that's that. And Wesley in this game, no chess was played. It was a very sharp line of the Nimso Indian defense, but it's a line that if both players know, which they did, Vincent knew it a little bit less, but you know, yeah, Wesley just sends this game. There's not much to look at here. It's gonna get a 1 minute recap. We have Armageddon. White gets 10 minutes. Black gets 7. Black has draw odds. The difference here is that Black has 3 minutes less, and that's very difficult when you are playing a Nimso Indian. It's one of the most rich and complicated openings in chess. You have to really think through your decisions. And if you're playing a guy who has 3 minutes and 45 seconds until they literally explode his chair, that's not how Armageddon works. Yeah, just attack him. This is a very complicated position. When you have low time and your position's difficult, you oftentimes try to force things. So knight takes, pawn takes, rook e1 or bishop c3 were all good. Here is Vincent trying to force things because he doesn't have a lot of time, and it's a very bad time to force things. Because Wesley chops up the position and plays d5, and now rook e1 and bishop c3 are coming. White is going to win this pawn, and then White is going to promote or checkmate, and that's the end of the game. Just kidding, that is not the end of the game, because this is the Armageddon time format, and in the Armageddon time format, all sorts of idiotic things happen. And here, Vincent gets completely back to equality, and then re-loses the game. I think White is winning here with f7, king c4. Wesley plays bishop e5, and at some point blunders back a draw. This is just a draw now. It's a king and pawn endgame, and I said when it's up a pawn, it's like winning 9 out of 10 times, but this is equal. It's king and pawn endgame. It's very complicated king and pawn endgame, because both guys are going to make queens, right? So takes. So both guys make queens. Yeah, problem is this is a brutal thing to defend. White is going to try to make another queen. Black is going to try to defend himself and not blunder a queen trade or a losing queen and pawn endgame, and now you are in a losing queen and pawn endgame. Literally, in like 2 moves, Queen b2 was wrong. You needed to go queen a1 check or queen e4. Vincent Keymer defended a losing queen endgame, or no, he didn't convert a winning queen endgame against Gukesh, and now he loses a drawn queen endgame. So the boot camp in the Keymer training facility is going to be queen endgames after the tournament. It's Armageddon, though. You lose games because you have 5 seconds on the clock. And yeah, Vincent, he had like 2 seconds to make some of these moves. He loses. Wesley wins. Wesley and Alireza are tied for first. At the moment, in their group, I believe they both have, no, Wesley has 14 points, actually. So Wesley has 14, Alireza has 13, Prague has 12, and Vincent has 10. Magnus has 2 rounds left. He could theoretically score 6 points, but there's no chance he's going to win the tournament. One of these guys is going to win the tournament. I don't think it's mathematically possible at all. Now, very exciting matchup here. This is Divya Bibisara. Bibisara and Divya have been leading this tournament bell to bell, whistle to whistle. This is one of my lines. I actually wrote a course on this, knight c3 Sicilian, and then you play like this. I always put the queen on e3, except normally black plays knight c6. Bibisara does not ever play the move knight c6. She just doesn't give Divya the satisfaction of moving her queen back. What's amazing is this move, e5, in this position is a blunder because you can sack the knight. Now this is sensational. Because you have such a lead in development, black has to play something like this, and after queen g3, white is nearly winning. Because white is just going to go bishop f4, rook e1, knight d5, and just black is multiple moves away from castling, which is just insane, actually. And I really wish Divya would have taken on e5, but she spent 18 minutes and she didn't take on e5. She was looking at it for sure, but she probably didn't trust, like, I can't possibly sacrifice a piece this early. And in the game, she got, she got a very nice positional advantage. I have seen Bibisara play some unfathomable positions in her chess career. Like here, Divya doesn't go for the repetition of moves. She has this, and like ultimately, Bibisara is down a pawn, but she's gonna start untangling her pieces here and launching very typical Sicilian-style counterplay with e5 and f5. The bishop can wrap around this way. The queen could maybe get involved in the attack. E4, F4, blah, 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 blah. And suddenly, like, white's position, despite having all the makings of a position, knight b6, knight d6, like, you have a positional edge. Yeah, positional edge, smositional edge. White rebuilds a really good position. And Bibisara is she's going to keep going. She's got a time advantage. Her position is miserable. Like, the knight is on d5, the bishop is terrible on b6, everything is going right for Divya. Divya has played in the candidates and here kind of like me. She gets really dominant positions against her opponents. Look at this. She's making improvements on every side of the board. But now it's time to actually win the game. And I have to tell you, that is the hardest thing in chess. As a person who is professionally bad at this, rook d5 is wrong, and Bibisara is really good at counterplay. And here's the counterplay. Suddenly with white, you're like, oh my god. If I take this pawn, rook e7, rook e8, g5 is there, queen f6, and queen h4. Yo, I'm like in trouble. With white, the realization that you might be in trouble with 27 seconds on the clock is like taking 5 laxatives at the same time. And if for whatever reason, some of you have done that, you know that doesn't feel very good. Rook e7, like you just don't, like you don't know what to do. You don't know what to do. Queen c2, Bibisara is very good at counterplay. Rook e4, very nice move, disconnecting the play. Rook b5 is just a tactical mistake because after bishop takes e3, she sacks the rook, but mate is there, and queen h5, queen h4, queen f6, queen h4 are there. The rook is gone. It can't come back to help. So you play queen f2. She takes. She's winning. She's straight up winning here. Rook e2, queen f3. We're in a time trouble. It's not the best defense. Queen e4, rook e1 is mate. And Divya resigns. Because if she goes here, bishop e3, rook f2, queen b1 check, and black uses just her last 3 remaining pieces. And Divya once again takes an amazing position, but she doesn't convert it. And I think Bibisara had a game like this as well. Both of these women are extremely good. They could probably be perennial top 5 players in the world if they converted their winning positions. Now, Bibisara is like 25-40, but Divya plays amazing chess, but has to seal the deal. Yeah, Bibisara just like vicious comeback, but it's great because they're from the next generation. So hopefully we keep seeing this matchup for quite some time. Here we have Zhu Jiner versus Wenjun, which is a potential world championship match that could have happened. We have 4 knights, by the way, 4 knights Scotch. You would think the Chinese players are just going to make a draw. This has been seen a million times, like, you know, trade some pieces, h6, takes. But I actually think white is playing this for a win. You can play this for a win. Bishop d6. You can just, like, bishop d6 actually a wrong move. This is wrong. And if you catch somebody off guard in this line, they're not going to know what to do. Bishop d6 is apparently incorrect. The bishop needed to be here to prevent knight d4. By allowing white free passage to d4, white now gets just a slightly better position forever. The pawn structure for white is just very pleasant. How do you win this game with white? You're going to win it Magnus style, obviously. I've actually seen Hans Niemann win games like this as well. The white king can make it over here. It's completely reasonable. There's some lines you block up the position, and then you can actually traverse the board, and you can win an endgame, with c3 and then a pawn majority. And we are about to watch Zhu Jiner, exactly that. So bishop b5, a4, rook d3, rook f3. She's going to continue to make some pressure here. Bishop d3. Okay, so black has invested in the blockade of the middle. White is probably not going to walk the king up the board. So white is going to try to attack these pawns. And before you know it, you realize you can't actually guard like anything here. So the rook infiltrates, right? Still, where is the win? Black has everything under control, right? Nope. You're going to trade some pieces. And there's the king. King's walking in. Where's the king going? Where's the king going? Why did she go rook e2? Why did she sacrifice the rook? So here, if let's say black does nothing, king f5, black does nothing, right? You can win this game with white by infiltrating and targeting some of the pawns. Like, you can play bishop c4, rook d6, and take the pawn on f6. That's one of the ways. What's funny about the position is, if you let the computer run, I think it thinks there are ways to create a defensive fortress here by black. Like, the evaluation here is 2.2 in basically every direction. But black here decides, like, I have to sacrifice material. But rook e2 was wrong. Apparently, the way to sacrifice material in some lines is to take this bishop. And if you do it like this, white can win because white's going to get the king in anyway, and then wreck you with the pawns. So g5 played, and the king has to go here, rook h5, rook h8, and you just get mated. Which is just like, how... We were just here. We were just in a position that just looked unpleasant. Yeah, it's equal material, but +2 for white. And these positions are very unpleasant to defend. 40, 50 minutes down, kind of like a Magnus situation, except those games were very sharp and very complicated. And the last game of the day, by the way, she defeats the world champ. The last game of the day, Anna Muzichuk, Hampi Konaru, an Italian. I think not too much happened in this game. I think it was a draw after some 30 moves. The players made the typical Italian improvements, multiple breaks in the center, but sometimes in these Italians, everything just gets traded, and this is one of those moments. You come here, you trade like this, then you trade some pawns, then you trade the queens, then you trade the rooks, and that's the game. A lot of time is spent, and so sometimes I hate to sort of, you know, gloss over it, but the truth is, for basically every single one of you watching, that's what happened in this game. There were certainly some opening nuances in the Italian, but, you know, the Armageddon is a little bit more fun. This was an Italian, but a very different Italian, offering a dark-scored bishop trade early, and, I mean, Queen E1 in the Italian is a move that is played in, like, 0.0001% of Italians. It's just a very flexible move. It's a bishopless middle game. It's still very equal, but as we know, in Armageddon, anything happens. You got 2 minutes on the clock with no bonus time, so you just think you're going to lose on time the whole game. Knight back to d2, knight to f3. You're trying. d5 is apparently a double question mark move. I mean, whatever. And then white is going to get a massive chance right here. White can take on g7 and just get it past h-pawn and is winning. The knight comes back this way, which is wrong. It needed to go back to h5 and f4. She goes back this way. When the players have a minute on the clock, I'm not going to really, you know, deep dive the analysis. The game is now back to being a draw. And obviously, in the Armageddon, when you make a draw with black, you win. Some of these matchups, very exciting, very big results. Ultimately, I think Hampi's been in last place the whole event. You can't even see her on this overlay. She's in last with 8, Wenjun 9, Zhu Jiner and Divya have 10, 10.5, and Bibisara has a 5-point lead. I think she's going to win the tournament. That is all I have for you today. Once again, I've never covered a Magnus tournament like this in my 6 years of content creation. So the real question is, what's going to happen next? That is a fascinating question that I will bring to you when the time is right. I don't know. We don't get to see him that often, you know? And it's quite clear classical chess, slow chess, is a very different game than 10, 5, 3, 1. He is the best chess player in the world, but classical chess is like the 5-set equivalent in tennis. And I don't know. This opens the door. The gap is getting closer. And I honestly, I really hope in many ways classical chess, while having the legacy of being the elite form of the game, and there's the Classical World Championship, I wish the same prize money was available consistently, not just like in the Esports World Cup or like a freestyle. I wish, you know, they played at least fast classical, 60-minute games, more, and we got more Magnus against more young players. But we'll see. Shocking stuff, though. You know the drill. Get out of here.